All right. Well, welcome everybody to book club. So we are actually on chapter 19, the ultimate rule of positive energy. So Jenny's going to be leading us today. So I'm excited. We are like cruising through this book, which is awesome. We'll have to start talking about what our next book's going to be.
You said I was reading, Ellen, not leading.
Reading, leading,
Reading.
same, but different.
Oh, okay, great.
That's all right. You know that I will,
See how that goes.
I add in. I'll ad lib.
Okay, there we go. All right. As they approached George's office, Joey gave him one last piece of important advice. There's one last thing I got to tell you about all this, George. You really need to know. It's so important, it's not even part of the 10 rules. It's in a class all by itself. It's like the ultimate rule of positive energy, and it's so important, I want you to write it down. George pulled out a piece of paper and a pen and waited for Joy to continue. Here it is, George. Your positive energy and vision must be greater than anyone's and everyone's negativity. Your certainty must be greater than everyone's doubt. After all, George, there will always be people who don't share your vision. There will always be the doubters who doubt and tell you you can't do this and you won't be able to accomplish that. They think that dreams were meant for others, but not for people like you and them. And there will even be people who don't want you to succeed because it makes them see their own weaknesses and failures. Rather than driving their own bus, they're trying to ruin everyone else's ride. So that's how important your positive energy is, George. You can always kick people off your bus, and you'll need to do this from time to time. But just remember, there will always be more negative people who get on. And sometimes you'll have an energy vampire on your bus, like a boss or someone you can't kick off. You've got to deal with them. That's why you've got to feed the positive dog and why you've got to cultivate it every day and why we give you the energy book. One day is not enough, George. It's got to be a habit. Positive energy is like muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. The stronger it gets, the more powerful you become. Repetition is the key, and the more you focus on positive energy, the more it becomes your natural state. So when someone comes at you with negativity, you'll be able to respond with strength and positive energy. Just as you become a more skilled golfer by playing more often, you also develop the skill of positive energy by practicing. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. So grow it and build it so you have the power to overcome the negativity. That's how it works, George. That's the key. George couldn't argue with her. His positive energy wasn't that powerful. That's why he had been so shaken by the people who hadn't gotten on his bus. He didn't have the strength and certainty, and his vision wasn't focused. He had allowed himself to be manipulated and affected by the naysayers because he was weak. He knew today would be the day that they would have to get the bus moving. Because it was up to him and he had to be strong, he vowed to himself that today would be different. But before he could step off the bus, Joy grabbed his arm. Oh, and one more thing before you leave, George. Take this rock. What is it? George asked as he held out his hand. Well, I know it doesn't look like much, all black and dirty, pretty ugly actually, but it's a special rock that was given to me by my teacher. When he gave it to me, he said, find the value in this rock and you'll find a priceless treasure inside yourself and in all the people you encounter. What do I do with it? George asked. Put it in your pocket for now, she said, and then look at it often and let it remind you of what I just told you. Find the value in yourself. Find it in the rock. Find it in your team.
Okay, so I have something I wanted to ask all of you. So how many of you have ever kind of overcome some negativity in your life, right? And by trying to strengthen your positivity? How many of you have ever tried to do something like that? You had somebody on a regular basis that you're encountering that's negative. And so do you agree with them saying that cultivating your positivity is like working a muscle, right? And so it's just like when you do, like you start going to the gym and it's not easy, and so you find yourself, and then if you don't go to the gym every day that week or whatever, you find yourself kind of sliding. The day you go to the gym, you're like, I'm drinking water, I'm eating salad, I'm eating chicken, and then the next day you're just kind of like, I can eat a pizza. I can eat a whole pizza, and so it's kind of like, but it's sort of the same thing when you think about that and you compare the two with the positivity. And just like Pam says, right? If motivation is like a shower. If you don't take one every day or you don't do it every day, you start to stink, right? So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you have to be disciplined with feeding that positive dog. Maybe that's the next book, because they talk about this book a lot. Maybe that'll be the next book we read. Anyways, so but they talk about, you know, feeding that positivity. And there are times like when there's something going on in your life, or somebody that you can't necessarily cut out of your life and they are negative. It could be a family member, you could sleep with him, it could be whoever, right? You can't like cut them out, right? And so you have to kind of combat that, right? And so, so what are some of the things that you do or that you attempt to do on a regular basis that combats the negative thoughts that you have, or the negativity that's coming at you from the outside? What are some of the things you guys do?
Melanie says in the chat, find value in yourself like there is a value in a rock. Think of a rock by the river, not much by itself, but add lots of rocks, a team, and it has power and confidence, strength to become a force to hold a dam or a creek bed intact. So one rock does hold value. And watch positive videos.
Mm-hmm. I watch positive videos a lot if I need that boost. And for me too, music will do it too. Music will alter my state, or even, you know, I mean, so that Champion song last week that Pam posted, that's my song. Like I sent it to her that day and I was like, hey, check this out. Cause I said, long live the champion, when she said she was feeling better. And then I was like, hey, listen to this song. I listen to it every day. And then she posted it. But I mean, it can alter, you know, just sort of your mental state at the time, or changing your environment, whether you clean up your environment or if you get outside of your environment and just go and take a walk or whatever. Is there anything else that anybody does sometimes to kind of put themselves in that positive space?
I like watching positive videos and stuff too, and positive quotes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, I saw you starting to talk, but we couldn't hear you. Maybe your mic is turned down or something. Try again.
I just said exercise and
Exercise.
doing things for others, like writing a thank you note or a card.
Yes, you are exactly right. That is definitely helps kind of boost that. Melissa said music, prayer, and going around positive people. Yes, I totally agree with that. Gina says she has to remind myself first thing in the morning. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's so important to kind of, and something else, because there are multiple people in the house, somebody could be having an off day and they're like changing the vibe of the house. I mean, just this morning, I was driving Joey to school and I'm like, hey, dude, what's up with you and dad? I was like, it's really like, I'm like, it's not cool. Like, I don't know what's happening, but you need to knock it off. Like, and he was just like, well, and I was just like, the attitude, it needs to stop. He's not giving me attitude, but he's giving it to Eric. Well, then that Eric puts Eric in a bad mood, which changes the state of the house. And so I'm just like, this needs to stop, you know? And so as the person, like, because I'm always kind of on the lookout for that negativity versus positivity, like what the vibe is in the house, it makes it easier to like from the outside go in and be like, hey, I'm not sure what's going on with you, and try to get to the bottom of it to help them pull them through when it comes to the kids. Kelly likes to sing really loud. I do that too, Kelly. In the car, I will crank that. I'm on my way to rally if I'm in a crap mood because whatever had just happened at the house. Yeah, I do that too. And being your own cheerleader, that's great, Stephanie. But it is, and I found myself this morning, I'm like, listen, everybody kind of snipping at each other. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what needs to happen here. I'm like, if I need to do some saging in this house, but we need to change whatever is happening, you know? And so I think it helps, you know, being aware. That's why I wanted to ask what some of the things you guys do, just because maybe there's somebody on the call that doesn't really know how to change that. And so this might give them some ideas. Yeah, Kelly.
Actually, one of my biggest things that I do is talk to you guys. You guys help a lot, like talking to other people in the champion team for my business type thing, you know, or actually anything, not just business. But if I find myself in a bad mood, and then I talk to Jenny, Ellen, Amy, Pam, I'm always feeling better. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to know who those people are, because you do have people in your life too, when you're in a bad mood, they jump on your bandwagon.
Mhm.
And so you want to try to avoid those people, you know. And Pam taught me a long time ago, and I hadn't picked up on this. And then once she pointed it out, I was like, oh my gosh, that, you know, Eric tries to come in and solve my problems. I don't need him to solve my problems. I just need somebody, I just need to like let it out, and then I can move on, but I don't need him. And so I will actually flat out tell him, like, I don't need you to solve this problem. I just need to talk it through. And he's like, okay. But he did. But before I made that connection that that's what he was trying to do, he would be on my bandwagon because he's defending me, like whatever the situation is. And so, yeah, it's important to know who those people are that are your bandwagon people. And I guess if you really want to go down the rabbit hole for a hot second, call them. But then you need to shift and you need to go to the people that are going to lift you back up and get you back on track. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's what's nice about cell phones. You can tell who's calling if their name's in there. So if you know you don't need to talk to them right now, you can just let it go to voicemail.
I totally I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, there are times like I'm just gonna use my mom as an example because she's not on here, and I love my mom. I do. And she's like been one of the biggest influencers in my life. And growing up, we were always very, very close. We're still extremely close. But she has a tendency to go on the negative side. I mean, she still thinks I'm going to run out of Tupperware parties. Doesn't really understand the concept of this. And so I don't really talk to her about the business because she puts doubt in my mind when it comes to the business. So I just sidestep the whole thing. I don't talk to her about the business. And I know that I can talk to her about practically anything else, but I don't talk to her necessarily about the business. And so there are times when I'm in this, like I'm combating the negative space in my head. And I'm like, I can't take that on right now. I don't know what she's about to call and tell me. I can't take it on. If she's going to complain about her senior club or whatever, I'm like, I can't do it right now. So yeah, I mean, it's important to recognize that. You're right, Jenny. And there are times that your phone rings, you see somebody, you're like, oh, perfect. I need somebody to pull me out of this. And I've even answered the phone that way. I'm like, I'm so glad you called because I'm in a weird place. Make me laugh, you know? So, and laughter, oh my gosh, laughter. I can't believe we didn't even talk about that. Laughter is one of the quickest ways to change and alter your current mood or state or whatever. And so on days that I am feeling kind of down or negative, and I'm trying to flip the script in my head, laughter will always help. And I told that story a couple weeks ago about that it was bedtime. I need to take a shower because I need to change my mood. And James came in and asked me to watch America's Funniest Home Videos, which I've been watching it now for like 15 years and I'm kind of over it, and it's just exhausting to me, and the host is annoying and all of that. And so, but I knew if I watched it, I would hear him laugh because he just like, by the end, everything is funny to him and he's laughing his head off. And I can't help but be in a good mood when I'm hearing him like full on belly laugh, can't even breathe, watching America's Funniest Home Videos. So I just watch it to watch him, you know, and it's so important to be able to do that.
It doesn't matter how many times people fall, it's still funny.
I know. Gina, you know what, Gina, it's so funny because before I got on this, the reason why I was late, because I was watching a Holderness family video. I was watching a Holderness family video because it showed up in my feed and I was just like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I started watching it. Oh yeah. They just make me laugh. They just make me laugh. And so yeah, there's lots of, and YouTube is just so great for all of that because it is, you know, you can just watch back to back to back of motivational videos or funny videos or comedians or whatever. So, or movies that just make you laugh, you know, so, or just make you smile, you know, it just kind of alters that. So very good. All right. So thanks everybody for sharing. Now we all have lots of tips and ideas. Take it away, Jenny.
All right, George takes control of his bus. The first thing George did when he got to his office was call Larry in for a meeting. He wanted to meet with each energy vampire, as Joyce suggested, so he could get his bus rolling first thing in the morning. He knew he needed to take action and fast. The team was waiting and they needed serious direction, focus, and positive energy today. As he sat at his desk waiting for Larry to walk in, a feeling of fear and nervous energy enveloped him. It feels like game day, he thought, as he remembered what it had felt like to have a nervous feeling in the pit of his stomach before his big lacrosse games. With the crowds cheering and the anticipation building, he remembered feeling like he was going to collapse and yet explode with excitement at the same time. He knew this feeling well, and it was good. It made him feel alive and let him know he was ready. Plus, his nervous energy had often become fuel for some of his best performances. It's game day, he thought, and for the first time in a long time, he felt alive and ready. As soon as Larry walked in, and before he could make a negative comment to George for interrupting his creative thought process, George struck hard and fast. He told Larry point blank that he had had enough of Larry's negativity, and if he didn't help move the bus forward in a positive manner, then he was off the bus effective immediately. Larry, while in shock at George's directness, responded with willingness and agreed to George's demands for positive energy and positive contribution. George wasn't surprised. He knew Larry had a family and couldn't afford to lose his job right now. Tom, on the other hand, was a completely different case. He had no allegiances to anyone, especially George. They had never liked each other, and they both knew it. But this isn't a matter of liking each other, George thought. It's a matter of getting things done and having the right team in place for the Energy 2000 product launch. So when Tom walked in, George was ready. I want you on my team, Tom, but I can't have you on the team if you're going to prevent us from achieving our goals, George said. I can't have you be a disruptive influence anymore. Who are you kidding? Tom responded forcefully. The only disruptive influence is you. The problems we're having is not because of me, they're because of you, because you can't lead. Don't blame me, blame yourself. I know we don't like each other, never have, but the real problem is I don't respect you as a leader, and I'm certainly not going to say what you want me to say so I can go on your silly little ride with you. You need me, George. The team needs me, and if you get rid of me now, then you'll be driving your bus right off a cliff. So unless you have something important to say to me, I'd like to get back to doing my job. George's shoulders slumped forward. He could feel his body getting weak as if the energy was being sucked out of him. He was wilting like a dying plant. He didn't know what to say and was shaking from head to toe. So why did you hand in your bus ticket? George asked. I only handed in my bus ticket to you because I wanted a front row seat when I watched your bus implode, Tom said with a big grin on his face. You and I both know it's going to happen, and when it does, no one will be happier than me. George put his hand passively into his pocket and felt the rock Joy had given him. He took it out and looked at it as if he was trying to think of what to say next. He had never expected to be overtaken like this. What's that? Tom asked. Pet rock? As George looked at the rock, he remembered what Joy had said about finding the value in yourself. He realized Tom didn't believe in him because George didn't believe in himself. He was allowing himself to be pounced on and verbally assaulted by a grinning, arrogant energy vampire who had no interest in helping his team succeed and certainly no desire to help George turn things around. And worst of all, he was taking it, just as he had taken it in the past years from everyone and everything. Every day, life had beaten him down a little more. Each day, his confidence had shrunk, and each moment, he became less of the person he admired and more of the person he pitied. George vowed he would not be weak today. He had vowed he would be strong, yet there he was being weak and beaten down again. Enough, George thought to himself as he clenched the rock in his fist. Enough, he thought as the word echoed throughout his entire body. Tom took a step back as he saw a transformation come over George. No longer will I become a punching bag for life or anyone else for that matter, George thought as he took a step toward Tom. You think I'm just going to sit here and let you talk to me like this? George said. Before Tom could answer, George said, think again. Are you very talented? Of course you are. Could we use you for this product launch? You bet. But I'd rather have less talent and a team that is all moving in the same direction and striving for the same goals than a team with someone who has your attitude. So guess what, Tom? If the bus blows up, you won't have to worry because you won't be on it. Effective immediately, you're off the bus. I didn't want it to be this way, but what you just said to me and your attitude give me no other choice. You're fired. Tom's jaw dropped as he stood frozen in shock. Then he turned, walked out of the office without saying a word, and slammed the door shut. One energy vampire off the bus, George thought, as he stood there still shaking from the argument. It wasn't easy, but he knew it was the right decision. Even though Tom was one of his most talented people, which is why he had put up with Tom for so long, it had to be done, and the team would be better off. Personally, George felt like a 200-pound weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He felt strong and free. Looking at the rock one more time before putting it into his pocket, he thought of Joy and smiled. For the first time in a long time, he was proud of himself. George's plan for the three wolves included Joy's recommendation of simply isolating them from the team since they didn't want to be on the bus. But when Michael walked into his office with guns blazing, telling George that he was crazy for firing Tom, and that this surely meant the bus was going up in flames, and so was George, he had no other choice but to tell Michael it was the bus's way or the highway. Michael, too proud to succumb and too angry to retreat, quit and decided he would get on another bus traveling on another road. That makes two, George thought. After the fireworks show George had experienced this morning, he wondered what else could be next. He didn't like conflict, yelling, or fighting. He certainly didn't like firing people or losing two members of his team, but he had vowed to stay strong and true to his vision. It was either this or failure. He was ready for battle with Jamie and Jose, but truly hoped they wouldn't have to exchange blows. When George told Jamie she was either on his bus or off it, she agreed to be on it, but then hit him, not with negativity, but with hard truth. I've worked for you for several years now, George, she said, and every year, every day for that matter, you seem to get grumpier and more bitter. We even had bets about when you would just implode, not show up one day and give up. But every day you kept coming in, making yourself miserable and your team miserable in the process. This team is a shambles now, not because of us, but because of you. None of us could believe they kept you so long. And so when you told us you wanted us to get on your bus, I'm like, there's no way I'm getting on his bus. Why should I? When his bus has been trudging along aimlessly for the past year. But if you say I have to get on the bus to keep my job, I'll get on it, but I want you to know why I didn't get on in the first place. George sat there stunned. He knew everything she had said was true, and yet it was difficult to accept it. He didn't know what to say or how to respond. He wanted to tell her about Joy, the energy bus, and what he had learned, but he was paralyzed, and besides, he didn't have time to get into it. All he did was thank her for her honesty and for being on his bus and wait for Jose, who was about to deliver another blow. When Jose walked in, George immediately said he was surprised that Jose didn't want to get on the bus after all they had done together. Jose didn't pull any punches either and came right back. That's right, George, he said. I've given you my all. I've done everything you asked me to do. I stay late, I work weekends. I pick up everyone's slack, and not once do you say thank you. Not once do you tell me that you appreciate my hard work and loyalty. And when I asked you for a raise, you said you'd think about it and never talked about it again to me. What's that all about, George? You just walk around here worrying about you and your job, and you don't really care about me. So when all of a sudden you ask me to get on your bus because you want to save your job and don't think we know that if this launch fails, you're gone, because everyone knows that, I'm supposed to get all excited and go, whoopee, I'm on your bus. It's not happening. It's hard for me to get on your bus when you surely haven't been on mine. Once again, George was hit right between the eyes. He'd been taking a lot of blows lately, and this one, coming from a person he liked and trusted the most, was the hardest. But he knew Jose was right, and there was nothing he could say to make Jose feel better at this moment. He was fired up, and George understood why. You're right, George said. You are right. That's all I can say. Jose, who was expecting to get fired and was surprised at George's response. He had seen Michael and Tom walk out of the office earlier and thought everyone was getting fired. So he was stunned and relieved at the same time that George was acting so calm. For a few moments, George and Jose stood there in awkward silence, both not knowing what to say. Jose spoke first. Okay, now what? He asked. George stood silent, considering now what, as a thought popped into his head that said, you can't change the past, let it go, create the future. Now we create our future, George answered confidently as his eyes lit up. He had been knocked to the canvas again and with two right hooks, but this time he got up. Life wasn't giving up this time. He wasn't giving up this time. No, this time he was charging forward toward his vision. Now I ask you to give me a chance to make it up to you, he said. I don't know how yet, but I'll think of something. Just please help me with the launch and let me prove to you that I'm someone you feel good about working for. Let me show you I'm here for you. Jose agreed, and they walked out of the office together to gather the team for a meeting that would be the start of a very productive and positive day. Am I still going?
Yeah, you can keep going unless
Okay.
anybody had something they wanted to add. Oh, wait, let me, Melanie added, in direct sales, it may mean having chats with the energy vampire, learning to encourage people, giving compliments, basically remembering that you aren't going to get there by yourself. It takes a team. Yeah, I agree with that. It's a little bit different when I remember the first time I was reading this book, and it is a little bit different for us because we are leading a volunteer army. But for those people that are wanting more out of the business, and we know that about them, those are people that we could realistically have a real conversation with and be like, hey, I don't like the direction this is going, or are you aware of this direction that this is going? Let's talk about it. What's going on? You know, and just try to get to the root of it, because it may be, maybe they are mad because they came to you and said, I want to be recognized more, and you haven't recognized them anymore. Or, you know, or maybe they came to you saying, I'm upset because of this and this, and nothing has been done about it. Because, you know, we're all trying to kind of feel our way through this, and we're working with different personalities who like different things for in the way of like awards and things like that. Some people are motivated by different things. So it's hard to have a blanket policy or recognition that you do and truly cover and hit all those different people where they like to be hit, you know, in their heart or in their mind or whatever. And so it kind of comes back to, you know, knowing your people and being able to help them in all the ways that you can. Gina says they see us as their leader, and maybe we need to say thank you more. And Melanie says we're only human and we make mistakes. Absolutely. Absolutely. What you got, Melissa?
Okay. I was just going to say, if you really have a conversation with a person that is negative, they don't see that they're being negative. And that's really hard, because if they don't see it, it's hard to know, how do you help them see, okay, this is how it was taken, and it may not work for everybody in, you know, that situation. So it was really interesting to me when a situation came up. It's like they don't even see that as negative.
Right. It's so true. And you know what? Over the years, one of the most negative people that I have dealt with had no idea that she was really coming off as being that negative. And she'd be like, you know me, I'm positive. And I'm like, say what? Like, do you know you? I'm like, you know, and they think that if they just say it, that makes them positive, and they don't realize that some of their comments and things just kind of, you know, cut like a knife. And it's important to kind of recognize that. And some people, you can kind of slowly bring them around and help them understand it if they're wanting to change, you know, and that's part of it. I mean, if they're not wanting to change, they don't care, you know, they're not going to respond to that.
I know a lot of times when I'm being negative, on those brief seconds that I'm
Moments,
yeah,
blink of an eye.
but I think I'm being realistic. I mean, seriously, I don't think I'm being negative. I think I'm being realistic, and there's no sense in getting all excited about something that I know isn't going to happen because it's never happened before, and blah, 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 blah. And you do. So when somebody goes, oh, that's a real positive attitude, I'm like, it's nothing to be positive about. I'm just being realistic. So, and I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, you know, it's not that they're trying to be negative. It's just that, especially depending on how their life has gone or is going at the moment, it's just where they're at. And it's not that they want to be negative. They just are trying not to get their hopes up about something they don't think is going to happen. Or, you know, life has shown them that they just need to be realistic about it, or their husband or their kids or their friends or whatever. It's like, you need to be realistic. So, and if you point out that maybe it's a little more negative than realistic, and maybe a mindset would help, then, you know, that's sometimes a little easier than get off my bus.
Get off my bus, Jenny.
Jenny, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I just am curious, when you're realistic, are you realistic with other people or just with yourself? Because that's what I fall into. I can be positive with other people all day long, but sometimes when I get realistic, that's with me. Oh, wait, that's not going to happen for me. But I would never do that with a team member. And I think that's really funny.
Yeah, it depends on who it is. I mean,
Okay.
honestly, and it depends on the mood they catch me in, probably. I have changed that a lot in the last year or so, because I used to be very realistic with a lot of people. And my kids especially, they would call about something they'd be excited about, and I would be the first person to say, well, what about this? What about this? And I know I did it, and I did it for way too many years in their life because they do it to me. And they learned it from me. So like while I'm trying to flip that switch in my head, it's working with some of them. I have one daughter that is going to take until she's my age probably to flip that switch in her head. I'm going to send her to Ellen. Because Ellen, you get Becky.
Becky. She's very realistic.
Very realistic.
That's what we're
Becky's a
calling it.
very
That's what
realistic
we're
young lady. Yeah. So
Yeah, but I remember a conversation with you, Jenny, a couple years ago, and I can't remember what the parameters were that kind of brought this conversation on. But it was one of those like those things that you realize, like I think your kids were mirroring back to you what you had given them all those years, maybe this realistic point of view, and you kind of were like, oh man, maybe I put limits on them being realistic. Do you remember that? I don't remember the specifics of it. I
I'm
don't remember.
sure it had to do with settling for things.
Yes.
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 And
it
it
did.
was
And
be
they just,
grateful for what you had and not expect more and just, yes. And
And you
that's the way
kind-
I was raised too.
Right.
So, yeah, you didn't want more. That was rude. You were just grateful for what you had and you went on about your business.
yeah.
So my kids just grew up thinking that, the next best thing was going to be a new pair of tennis shoes. They had absolutely no idea that there was more out there than that.
Yeah. And I remember that conversation because it was like, you were just like, I did this. Like I created this, not realizing over the years of being maybe a little too realistic. But also, it's one of those, for years, I was like an advocate for, expect the worst and hope for better. That was something that came out of my mouth on a regular basis for years, because I'd been like, I'd had those big dreams and I'd had those big things, and they just been shot down. And that was my way of protecting me, because then it was just like, it was still a win, even if it was a failure, as long as it wasn't the worst case scenario.
So talking about like my kids and stuff like that, this is kind of funny. And it was funny yesterday. Brittany was having a birthday party for Lily and Paisley, but she had canceled it because it was supposed to be a pool party and they couldn't have it outside because it was a mess and she didn't want a ton of people in her house, all things considered. So she tried to cancel the party. Well, Alex's family were not going to be canceled, so they were all coming. And there was like 15 of them. And she texted me and she goes, Mom, there's going to be all these people in my house and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you could give out massless party favors. And she just kind of laughed. Well, about half an hour later, she sends me a message that says, don't suppose you'd want to spring from Cleveland for pizza, would you? Because they didn't have any food. She had canceled. She didn't make anything.
Oh no.
And before I could answer her, she sent me another text that said, by the way, this is your, if you never ask, the answer will always be no theory.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But that's a good, that's a good lesson. That's sales 101. If you never ask, the answer will always be no. So this is part of, Jenny 2.0 right there. Yeah. Yeah. But it is, and so it's important to just kind of, to recognize that and be able to kind of pour into them. And Melissa, I love your insight saying like, I do it to myself, but I would never say that to somebody else. And I think a lot of us do that. We say things to ourselves that we would never, ever say to our worst enemy. Right? Yeah. Lydia's like, yeah, right. Right. And if you talk to anybody else that way, they would not be your friends anymore. And you have to continue living with yourself. You can't get away from yourself. So we need to be more kind to ourselves, and we need to, speak that positivity to ourselves. The other day, Lori and I were having a conversation, and I was just like, and so those of you, well, Amanda will understand this. And of course, Lori's the one who's like, oh, is it a beer and appetizers night? So when I would be feeling like melancholy, like I'm like, I don't really know what's wrong, whatever. That was my go-to. Like and Eric would be like, hey, what are you having for dinner? And I'd be like, you know what, let's just do beer and appetizers. He's like, oh, like what's wrong? Like what's going on? Because that was what would cheer me up. By the time I was done with the beer and appetizers, I was a different person. Like I didn't have to cook. I got this yummy, junky food and I drank my beer and all was good. Then I got celiac. Well, no more beer. And the appetizers, most that I ate, had gluten in them. So then beer and appetizers wasn't very appealing to me, but that's my signal. Like when I say it's a beer and appetizers night, that means I'm in a weird funk and I got to get out of it. And so Lori, I was saying, we were going back and forth saying we both were kind of in a funk. And she said, is it a beer and appetizers night? And like, you know what? It is a beer and appetizer night, and I thought it was funny that she brought that back around because I used to talk about it when we did our team meetings. And so the next day, her and I both ended up texting the next morning. We're both like, new lease on life. And what was funny is we both did the same thing. We both like got into bed and just started reading. She was reading one of the positivity book that John Gordon has. I went to bed and I was reading Joel Osteen, and I was just like, okay, I'm like, there's purpose here. There's a meaning behind everything. And I have to keep going, and people need me and I need them. And, and just kind of kept going. And I thought it was funny that we both reached for a similar thing to help build us back up. And that is one of the most important things that you can ever learn and achieve, is the ability to lift yourself back up, because there are going to be times there's not going to be anybody there to lift you back up. For whatever reason, your phone's dead, like whatever, like there's no way that you can reach out to somebody else to lift you back up. What do you do? What do you do in that situation? Do you pray? Do you do affirmations? Do you take a walk? Do you if your phone's dead, I guess you wouldn't really be listening to music on your phone. So you have to like just sing your own favorite song. What are you going to do? Jump up and down? What are you going to do? And so it's so important. That's one of the most important skills you can ever give yourself, the gift of learning, is how to pull yourself through. Because you can't always count on somebody else to do that for you. And you also don't want to always be that person that's like, help me, I'm so negative, help me, I need help, I need help pulling through this. You want to sometimes be able to pull yourself through it, because there are times when you're in it that you're gonna have to pull somebody else through it. You're gonna have to be that person helping somebody else and helping yourself at the same time. So it's important to know what it is that is for you. Stephanie says, Melanie said, we can't fire people, although for the vampire suckers, vampire suckers. That's funny. Yeah, we have to kind of try and combat that and try to help them come around. But it's kind of like people that bring drama to the group. If you don't respond to that drama and you don't jump in there with them, they have a tendency to fizzle out and go away. And it's sort of the same thing with negativity. And those are the people that are like, I know, you're just going to tell me blah, 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 blah. And my mom says that. She'll be like, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say that I shouldn't do this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, yep, I am. And it doesn't faze me. When she comes back at me that way, it doesn't even faze me, and so she knows not to come to me with those complaints, because I'm going to be like, Mom, if this group brings you such grief, quit the group, or like this volunteer job she had that she was constantly complaining about. I'm like, Mom, it's volunteer. You can leave. And so it's one of those things. So Stephanie says, I'm definitely harder on myself and possibly my own worst enemy. You are so not alone with that, Stephanie. So just take comfort knowing that you are not alone in that we all struggle with that. We may not look like it on the outside, but we definitely all struggle with that. Were you gonna say something, Lori?
Yeah, I was. I just think, and I saw Melissa's comment about John Gordon. Yes, I do. I either read a book or I go to a Positive University and I listen to something. It always helps me. But I think what I've taught myself to do is when I'm feeling that way, when I'm feeling, maybe things aren't going as the way I envision them going, I recognize that and I don't snap out of it right away, but tomorrow's a new day. And I always come back the next day with a different attitude, a good night's sleep, something. And it's recognizing that it's okay to feel that way, but you don't live there. It's not day after day, this and that and this and that. And, I think with me personally, a lot of it is life experience. The longer you live, the more experience you have. And I'm going to say this in the nicest way, but in my circle, whether it's not Tupperware, well, even in Tupperware, most of us are all positive, in my personal life with our friends that Dwayne and I have, family, I do not swing in any circles of drama anymore. I don't do it. The friends back when I was in my 20s or my 30s, if they were drama, I don't have those friends anymore, because you don't realize the people in your life influence how you think and how you think about yourself. And I just lost my one earphone. I have weird ears. My earphones don't want to stay in. Um, can you guys hear me, even though
Yeah.
that fell out? Okay. I don't swing in those circles in my personal life. I do not do it. And, you know, I pride myself on that. And, you know, if I see, like Jenny said, someone comes in with a call or someone messages me and it's someone from the past, I don't engage. I just, that's how I live my life. And I think it really, really helps. And on a team level, I think all of our team members are positive. I've had a few that haven't been, and I've tried, and there are some people that just don't want to be helped. And you know what? There's nothing I can do. I don't let them live in my world of being drama and negative. I just let it go. And I think that's the most important thing to learn. And sometimes in your life, you can't just get rid of the drama, but work very hard on getting away from the people that cause that in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. And it's difficult to find people outside because of our Tupperware bubble. And we're so spoiled with all of the people that we do surround ourselves with in Tupperware that it sometimes it's hard to find it out in the real world, right? Those people that are gonna like fill you, like leave you and feeling positive when you leave them, like you do in Tupperware. Yes, Kelly.
I will say, like Lori, so I've always consumed myself with drama. I mean, I'm only 28, so I'm still like learning a lot. And my best friend, she's my best friend, she still is, but she's just drama. Like everything she talks about, it's like, and I'm realizing it now that I've been in Tupperware and around the directors, really, it's like, oh my God, everything she says is drama. So I'm like taking a step away and finding new friends. And of course, you guys are great too, but it's like, that's awesome. So then reading the other book, this one, has helped me. And I found somebody that wanted to join my team, and they're so negative already. And I'm like, I don't even want you on my team. Like, I honestly am like, I mean, I'm going to try to help, of course, but I'm like, I don't think I want to recruit you. Like, it's weird. I'm like, wow, I'm changing. So it's really cool. And it's growing up, honestly. So
it's funny because there have been parents that I've met at the school, and they're sent, like there was one woman in particular, and she's sending me all the signals, right? Like recruit me, recruit me, recruit me. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I can do it. And it's funny because I ran into her son yesterday when I was tearing down the fair. I'm sitting there and I was talking to the boys at the gate, telling them I needed to go in and tear down. And he's like, "Hi, Mrs. Lewis." I was like, "Oh my gosh, hi." And then I was telling Eric who it was, and I was like, "Yeah, his mom. She's really nice, but just very like needy and just very negative, very negative. Like everything was just kind of like, well, did you see about this?" And one of the things that Pam says, and I know everybody on this has probably heard her say it at least a time or two, do not get in their ditch. Do not get in the ditch with those people. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody just recently, and I was like, don't get in the ditch. And I was like, I know what you like to do. You want to go down there, set up camp, have a party in their ditch, but you can't do that right now. You got two big goals. Like, you can't do it. Like, keep going, and it's so important not to set up camp in that negative place with those people and do that. So Gina said, before you go to bed, you find one thing that you did or that someone said, etc., that was positive, and think about that with gratitude before you go to sleep. Yeah. And it helps to journal that type of stuff too. At the end of the day, just kind of be grateful for a couple of things that happened throughout that day. It helps you kind of pull those things out and realize, like, even when you're going through hard times, realize that there are some good things going on. Melanie agreed with Lori, and Gina agrees with Lori and said, great advice. Stephanie said, you can only do so much for others no matter how hard you try. They have to help themselves before they realize you are trying to help and not hurt. You're absolutely right, Stephanie. And sometimes in that process, you do end up losing some friendships that you valued. And, and it doesn't mean like it, when that has happened to me, I don't cut people out. I just very slowly, I'm like not calling them as much as I used to, or I'm not always saying yes anytime they're asking to go out, but I might on occasion, do that. And I realized there was somebody who was actually in Tupperware that I was friends with years ago. And I started realizing when I left hanging out with her, doing something with her, I felt bad about myself. And that was and it took me a while to make that connection that she made me feel bad about myself. And it was very subtle. It wasn't like she insulted me or did anything like that, but it was sort of that one-up type relationship. And that she continually was trying to come between me and the other relationships that I had formed in Tupperware and make it seem like she had a better relationship with that person. And it was very difficult because at the time I really needed more friendships and I thought that we had some sort of a connection. But when I realized that, and it was funny because years later, because Ella and Joey, it was when I first started in Tupperware, and Ella and Joey were little, and Ella says, "Hey mom, whatever happened to Mrs. So-and-so?" And I said, "You know what, sweetheart?" I said, "I realized after I would be with her that I didn't feel good about myself and I didn't like that. So I haven't been hanging out with her." And I thought that was such an important lesson for my daughter to learn. And I said, it's really important for, you to recognize that about your friendships. If you have somebody that makes you feel bad about yourself, they're not really your friend. As much as you want them to be, and as much as you think they are, they're not really your friend. And so it's important to kind of recognize those things too.
And I just want to follow up. And I know Kelly is young, in her 20s. I don't by any means, I'm not saying go through your list and just stop talking to these people,
Cut them out.
But I think it's important that you recognize it and you just kind of maybe drift away. Because I'm looking and I can see who kind of agreed with what I was saying. Melanie, Gina, we've been around the block. Not that, and Lydia, Lydia's waving, it's life experience. And for all you younger people, it's just something you learn, but right, you kind of gradually drift away. But we're very fortunate. Ellen said Tupperware bubble. I said that to her the other day. I'm like, do you ever feel like during this pandemic, you're just in this Tupperware bubble? And outside of that, there isn't a whole lot because we're all positive. We're all like, yeah, let's do that, and other people on the outside, will see that. Like I take great pride in like my friends, like Girl Scouts or school. They'll say, "Oh my God, you are so much fun to be around. You're always positive. You're always sparkly." And I'm like, and I attribute that to my mindset, but the people that I surround myself with. Mm-hmm. And you might not think it is you, but other people view you that way. So just be aware of it. Kelly, I don't want you to dump your best friend.
The way I realized it was I would always call my dad and complain. And he's like, "Kelly, I don't want to hear it. All it is negative that you're telling me." And I'm like, "Well, I want to talk to you." And he's like, "I don't want to hear it." And then that made me realize who's doing that to me. And I'm like, and it honestly came from a path of, I had a lot of, I still do. Like I have a lot of stuff going on in life. So it's like, and I vent a lot. That's how I get I talk to somebody. But now I'm realizing I don't have to do that. I can do it within myself. So, but yeah, I realized my dad was like, "I don't want to hear it. You're just bringing negative into my life, negativity into my life." So I was like, oh. And then I realized it, and that's how I'm kind of, and I'm not going to just drop them because I care about them. Right. And I honestly want to help them because that's how I am, but we'll see.
So again, on the older person side of it,
Look at all the moms you have in this group.
I know. There were truly people in my life that that at different points in time, I could not imagine not talking to every day or not, sounding off at them or listening to them. And it's really funny because most of my oldest friends, like year-wise, are from the Bradner Rising Sun area. And I don't talk to them a lot anymore. But one of the funniest things was after a year or so of not being in that area, the people that I had been the closest friends with would text me things like, "Well, you're just so different since you moved to Cleveland. Like it was Cleveland's fault, you know. But what was different was like the one lady, she's older, and she and I worked together for like 15 years. And I do love her, but she is one of the most negative people God ever put on the face of this earth. And I still, when I go home, when I go back to Bradner, I still go see her just because it's just one of those things. It's like going to see a relative that you know you have to go see whether you really want to go see him or not.
Because if you find out you're in town, you're
Yeah,
busted.
it's over. And so like the first thing I do every time I get there, and we always sat on her front porch. So I'll get there and she'll go, I made coffee, which is great. And she'll bring me out a cup of coffee. And the first thing she does every time is, do you want one of my cigarettes? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And she's like, oh, it's just not the same if you don't smoke a cigarette with a cup of coffee. And it's like the one thing she knows is going to send me over the edge, because there are days when I would love to have a cigarette, and especially when and so, you know, and I try not to, but everything she talks about, and like, if she can't find anything negative to talk about right then, she'll go back 15 years and talk about something negative that happened then, so that we can like rehash it, you know? And so like my visits get shorter and shorter, or I'll say, oh, the last time I went home, I was like, hey, I'm going to be in town, but I'm only going to be there for a couple hours. I'm so sorry. I can't stop because I just can't do it. But, and a lot, even my relatives have said the same thing. Well, your whole attitude's changed. And they say it like
And
it's
that's
a
a
bad
bad
thing.
thing?
And
I know.
I'm thinking, yes.
Oh my
Mission
gosh,
accomplished.
so
Yay.
funny.
So yeah, people are funny, and they try to make you feel bad about feeling better, and especially if they don't get on the bus with you. So
Well, and that's something that, I mean, in that very first chapter that we read today, that was one of the things that he talked about was that sometimes their people's negativity, they're seeing their own weakness and failures. And that's exactly what that is they're seeing their own weakness and failures. So they have, it's the crabs in the bucket, right? They have to try and pull you back down. And so that's exactly what that is. And sometimes, unfortunately, you see it when somebody, you know, gets recognition and stuff, where they step up a level, they succeed at something. And then people that were kind of cheering for them right up until that moment, now suddenly are not as happy for them as they thought they would be, you know?
and people that know your past, Kelly, because I just read your comment. So one of the first things that happened when we moved back from Alabama back to the Bowling Green area, which is where I grew up, for lack of any place better to go, we went to the church that I had grown up in. And we went 1 week, and my kids were between the ages of 12 and 2. And we got back in the car after church. And on the way home, I said to Michael, we have to find another church. And he was like, well, the people were very nice. Hi, Delaney. And I said, the people were very nice. I said, Serendi's 12 years old. And I said, the rest of the girls are going to grow up. And I said, everybody wanted to talk about the way I was when I was a teenager. And I said, I don't need girls to know that right now. I said, we can talk about that later, like when they're 40, and it's important, but not now. But that was all they were getting. That was all they were going to get was, oh, I remember your mom whenever she does that. And I was
crazy.
not a model teenager, guys. So I did not need that happening in my world, because my kids thought I was okay. And they need to keep that there. So yeah, but people will do it. And the people that know you best are the ones sometimes that are the worst about it, because something good happens and they're like, oh, but I remember when this, and you're just like, go away, make it go away.
Okay, so Kelly said that that happened to her dad when he moved to California, that he'd come back to Ohio and people kind of make fun of him because he was so positive. And I think that happens a lot in life, is when you change a job and you change for the better, and then people are like, what happened to you, and all that. Or maybe make a positive change in your life and people like the smoking. So Melanie said her mom is so negative. We don't get along, but we do better now because I think I tolerated her better due to learning how to deal with people and different personality types and stuff. Where personality types helped me significantly with dealing with some of the people that I didn't get along with in the past. Honestly, it's not that I didn't get along with my father-in-law. He just really liked to push my buttons because he loved me, and that's what he did with people that he loved. And I know that. But for a while I didn't. And so when I learned the personalities, it was like the biggest light bulb moment for me when I was like, oh my gosh, that's why he does this, this, and this. Like, and it helps you just tolerate it a little bit more. It's a good word. Helps you tolerate those differences that you have with people when you have a greater understanding as to why they're doing the things that they do. Gina says, we need to ask God to give us the wisdom to know what to say. I do that almost daily. Like I because there are so many times I get tongue tied. I'm not, Jenny is very quick-witted, and Jenny always has a comeback. And when I'm telling Jenny about a problem that I had or an issue or whatever, she's like, well, did you say this? And I'm like, I should have. She's like, what'd you say? I'm like, nothing. Like, I'm that person that a day later, I'm having a redoing the conversation in the mirror with everything I should have said to that person that put me on the spot, right? So I do pray to God a lot. I'm like, please give me the right words that they're good, that's going to get through to this person, that they're going to be able to hear or see my side. I do that a lot. Sometimes God puts people in your life for a specific reason. And like Lori said, we don't drop them totally from our friend list, but we have to prepare before we talk and spend time with them. Absolutely. Absolutely. And figuring out what's going to speak to them and how we can help them, if nothing else, even if we can't like set their world on fire with Tupperware, even if we can try to get them to see that different perspective, even if they don't agree with it, and that's important for us too, to see their perspective. That's like in the car this morning when I was like, what's going on, dude? Like, and, because it could be something deeper that's going on that's leading to the attitude, the negativity, all of that. Lori said, I agree, Gina. God puts people in our lives for specific reasons, for a specific time, all to make us better, different person in some way, shape, or form. Yes, absolutely. So this was great. This was a great discussion today. Thanks, guys. So next week we'll start on chapter 21, and we'll go from there. So thanks everybody for joining us. Did anybody have anything else that they wanted to share before we wrap it up? Just want to make sure.
I just wrote in the chat, but thank you.
It's great to see more people on this morning. That's awesome.
I hope you enjoyed it.
And it's okay. You ladies that don't have the book, is it easy to follow along?
I'll be reading today. I need to catch up.
Catch up on George's life, all his problems. I know, but but even when you don't have the book, I think there's so many like good key points that people can pick up on, even if they haven't read the book. And it helps that we do read the book when we're kind of going through it too. So if you come and you haven't read the chapters, you can get it on audio too. Well, awesome, everybody. Thanks so much. Have a great week. And I'm sure I'll be talking and seeing to most of you in the next couple days.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.